My name is Brian Kemurgor. I'm a student at Laikipia University pursuing computer science. If you'd like to know more about me, you can visit my LinkedIn profile at Brian Kemurgor. Um, so let's head straight to the agenda of today. Yeah. So today we're going to have an introduction to APIs and Postman. Thereafter, we'll dive into requests and responses. Then we'll do API hands-on skill where Bob will take us through. Thereafter, we'll have some follow-up resources where if you want to pursue more about Postman and APIs, you'll have learning resources. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A session. Yeah. So, so let's see APIs in a simple way. We have a digital restaurant where we have a client, we have a customer, we have a waiter, and we have chefs inside the kitchen. So how does this apply in the API field? As you can see, we have a customer who is a client, and a client sends a request through an API to a server. Here, the customer asks for a certain type of food, let's say coffee. And then what the waiter does, he goes into the kitchen and asks the chef for coffee. And then the chef prepares the coffee and hands back the coffee to the waiter. And the waiter thereafter brings the coffee to the customer. So here, the waiter is an API, while the chef is the API server where all the database is stored. And you as a customer, you are the client where you send a request and you receive a response based on the request you've sent. I think that's a brief explanation of an API as a digital restaurant. So let's see what really is an API and why you should use one. As you can see in these slides that I've presented, uh, it allows services to communicate with each other. So let's say you have an application, let's say Instagram, for example, and there is an Instagram company which is Meta, where they have a server-based place where they hold their data. You can't literally access the servers, but when you use APIs, you can be able to interact with the kind of services or information you'd like to receive from that application. Also, as you see, software has become more complex and collaborative over the years. So developers no longer need to create every single service from scratch. Another one, APIs allow developer to access data from a service, like for example, Google or Twitter, without any knowledge of how the code base has been implemented. Because if because having a if you understand code base is only understood by a few people who are developers. So let's look at the technical aspect of an API. So if I may ask you, how many APIs do you think are there inside this picture? How many APIs do you think they are? Yeah, yes, Job. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is well documented. Thank you, Bob. So there is a hardware API. We have the software API, and then we have the one that holds the data that where users can interact with it. Yeah. So let's proceed. Mm, there is an API for everything. Depending on the type of service you'd like to receive from the internet, there is always an API that will simplify tasks for you. Whether it is a CAT API, whether it is an open weather map, whether it is Discord, whether it's YouTube to MP3, all those APIs are available, and they are easy to understand and they are easy to use, which makes it so much user friendly to users. Uh, so going on, mm, as you can see here, APIs do turn software into Lego bricks. So let's give look for an example like an application like which one? Let's say Jumia. Jumia, we have like three main sections. We have the customer, we have the online platform, and we have the warehouses itself. So warehouses are where the actual products are being stored, and the details of those products are being updated inside a certain server. And then a web application interacts with the API and displays the warehouse information where, let's say, shoes, whether the shoes are available, they are being displayed onto the front interface for users to see and choose which kind of product they would like to purchase from the Jumia application. That is one of the best aspects that an API has. Another example is these payment platforms. Let's say when you want to get a certain service from the internet, and then that service is being paid for. That payment payment feature is an API where a certain company has created that API for payment, where it integrates with your bank account. When a person makes a purchase, it interacts with it and sends requests and responses to confirm whether you've made the actual purchase in order for you to receive a certain service. Yeah, awesome. Um, so let's look at the postman diagram. As you can see, postman is an API platform for building and using APIs. Uh, it simplifies each step of the API life cycle and streamlines collaboration, so you can create better APIs. As you can see in the diagram, we have like a diagram that shows how APIs improve collaboration and efficiency inside, let's say, a company. So the APIs will help us design, test, mock, monitor, document, and discover those APIs in detail. Uh, Another thing, let's say in testing the APIs, it is crucial to ensure that they work as expected. So the postman, what it does is you can write test scripts, let's say in JavaScript, to automate the testing process, and then the postman will allow you to set pre-request scripts and test scripts that run after the request is made. This ensures that the APIs return the expected responses as it is required. Let's say concerning the design. So it involves defining the structure and behavior of your API before you implement it. Um, Moment. So while designing an API, you can create and organize API requests into collections. This will help in defining the endpoints, which are the HTTP methods, which we'll learn on later on in the course of this program. On mock APIs, this will allow you to simulate API responses without relying on a live server, where you will create mock servers in Postman to minimize the behavior of your API. This is useful for front-end developers who need to develop and test UI components without waiting for the backend to be ready. And concerning the monitoring the APIs, this ensures they are up and running and performing optimally. By setting up monitors in Postman to run your collection at regular intervals, this will help in checking the health and performance of your API endpoints. And also, you can configure alerts to notify you when an API endpoint fails or when performance thresholds are breached. That is one of the another advantages of using Postman to test your API. We also have a documentation. As you know that in every software that is built, there has to be a documentation concerning on how to use a certain software. So in documentation, it is essential for sharing information about how to use the API with developers and stakeholders. So we have a Postman which can automatically generate API documentation based on your collections and requests. This documentation includes details about endpoints, request parameters, and response formats. Also, Postman documentation is interactive, allowing users to try out API requests directly from the documentation page. You can also discover APIs using Postman. It helps you find existing APIs that you can use or integrate with. So now let's look at Postman in an industry standard tool. As it is a collaborative API development, you can see that there are 98% of Fortune organizations use Postman to test their APIs. You can see we have PayPal, we have Atlassian, we have GrandHub, Frontier, and also we have 65% of global organizations also do use Postman. So let us look at before and after Postman came into the world of API. As you can see, before Postman came into existence, we would used to use the command line interface, which would look scary a bit. But when Postman came in, it created a beautiful user interface for us to interact with and test and create APIs in a simplified and easy way. So which makes also Postman a very good software for you to be able to debug and also ensure that your API is efficient as required. So let's look at requests and responses. In the pattern of request and response, the pattern of request and response, we have the client, we have the network, and we have the server. So as a client can be a user where a user will send a request to a server. And then the API server will process that request and give a response based on the request that is sent. This is one of the ways that where users can interact directly with a backend server to get data where that they need to use or they need to interact with. So in making requests, we have three ingredients to make a simple request. We have the method, we have the address, which is the endpoint URL, and we have the path. So let's look at this into more detail. Let's look at that URL. Based on these three ingredients to make a simple request, I would like to ask, which is the in this URL, which is the method, which is the URL, and which is the path? Could someone volunteer to give an answer? in that URL, which one is the method, which one is the URL, and which one is the path? Yes, Huntington?
Yeah, so if I can give it a try,
Mhm.
I think the get is the method,
Mhm.
the HTTPS www.google.com is the URL, and the search is the path.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's look at it in more detail. Moment. As you can see, the get is the method. We have other methods. We have the post, put, patch, and delete method, which we'll look later on as we practice hands-on while using Postman. As you can see, the get method will retrieve information. We have the post method, which sends information. We have the put or patch method, which updates the information. And we also have the delete, which deletes the information. Going on, we have the URL itself. You can see the HTTPS is the protocol. As you can see, this is the scheme of the request, which ensures having that HTTPS ensures that the URL is secure and free from attackers. As the host, let's say www.google.com is the address of the server, which is the host. And then search is the destination where the request can be heard and executed. Up to there, does anyone have a question before we proceed? Okay, so let's proceed on. Mm, uh, we have, while building your request, there are things that you'll have to put into consideration. We have the parameters, which you will put them in the query. You will practice this while we test an API using Postman. We have authorization. We have the header and body, which are the data types. Now let's look at the request, the body, the data payload, which is optional, but often supplied with post and put requests. The data types are we have form data, we have JSON, we have text, we have HTML, we have XML, GraphQL files, and many more. But as for this activity, we'll use JSON for our data manipulation. For create, update, delete, we'll use JSON. Yeah, so let's proceed. Let us review the responses. We have the response elements, which are, we have the status codes. We have the 200, which means stands for OK. We have the 201, which stands for created. And if I may ask a question, what does error 404 mean? Could someone give a guess? What does the error 404 mean in testing APIs? Yeah, Eric Mongi. Yeah, absolutely. So the error 404 means the page you're looking for or the URL endpoint you're trying to access is not available. We also have the headers, which will help us access the body data. Yeah, so up to here, I'll give Bob a chance to present, to take us through the API process. Bob. Yeah.
Which is a foundational course into APIs, understanding APIs. So as Bran said, we are using Postman for testing our API endpoints. And if you do not have Postman installed, you can go ahead and install Postman. Is my microphone unmute?
No, you're okay.
Awesome. So you can go ahead and install Postman. Just go to www.postman.com and install Postman. You can also install Postman from your favorite code editor, that is VS Code. There is an extension also for Postman, and you can go ahead and install, use the web client for Postman. So awesome. So I'll share a link to the charts right now. Let me just pick that link. Or you can share the link to the collection that we'll be using today. As
Okay.
he's doing that, if you have a question regarding Postman, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll gladly answer your question. So is my screen visible? API 101.
Yeah, it is visible.
So consuming API, the first thing you need to understand is the documentation of the API. So as you can see on your screen, hopefully Brian has shared the link to the documentation to the API that we're using today. The first thing is understanding the documentation of API, the different requests and different endpoints you can post, get, undo those methods to your API. So for this one, it's an API 101, fundamental API. Hopefully most of you have forked the collection. Have you? Have you forked the collection?
Yes.
So it's an interactive session. So it will be an interactive session, and as Brian said, there will be swags later. So please follow along. Once you have the link, you'll come here. Is my screen visible? You'll go ahead and fork the collection. Okay, Brian, you can probably send the link.
Yeah, I've sent the link.
Let me just pick the link from here.
I hope everyone has spoke to the collection.
Please do fork. It's an interactive session again. So Postman is more like a GitHub where you're able to share repositories. In Postman, you are able to share collections, those folders that we call repositories in GitHub. In Postman, they are called workspace and collections. So once you've had this, you'll go ahead and click on fork. I think I've already forked, but yeah, it's more like Git. The way you fork a project in GitHub, the same way you can fork it in Postman. So we'll be doing a CRUD operation to this API. So there is a backend that has already been built and they've exposed the different API endpoints, and we'll be testing those API endpoints. We'll be performing the CRUD operations. So for the get book API, hopefully everybody is here by now. If you are not, please do raise a hand and we'll get to you. Who's not?
Everyone has spoke to the collection. Okay,
Okay.
there is a certain button that is a moment. Yeah, on that link that I sent, there is a there's a navigation bar where there's a button that says fork. You click on it and then you give it a name, and then it may prompt you to create an account where you create a free account and you fork it.
So as you fork the repository of the collection, I'll go ahead and introduce the first endpoints that we'll be using and introduce postman. So this is what we call a collection, the folder. Then the book API is what we call a request. So we'll be creating a request here. Remember, Brian talked about the different methods that you can apply to an API endpoint. For the first request that we'll be making, we'll be getting all the books in the database. So remember, the API gives us a way of interacting with the database. So we have the GET request, and we'll have the postman library, that is the URL, and then we'll be having the path, which is books. Let me go ahead and share that, and I'll click send. So awesome. So here we have the result, the resulting things that are in the database, the books, and you can see the response. We've gotten that JSON response, and from the JSON response, we can see different objects of books, which has title, author, ID, genre, year published, checkout, and created that. Can you make that request? So I'll show you how to create the request. So but if you're not able to fork the repository, you can go ahead and create a collection. Then you add a request. Just add a request. Give your request a name. Awesome. So once you've had that, go ahead and pull their URL and the path. And specify your method and save that and hit send. That is a simpler way of creating a request, of getting books. Anybody facing challenges?
Dennis, are you okay? What's up?
You're awesome. So, okay, we'll go ahead and add a book. So the first person to add a book gets a postman t-shirt. So we'll go ahead and create a book. Remember the URL, the path, right? This path here, postman API glitch.me. That is the URL. So it's not customary for you to pass a URL hapo, like it's visible to everyone. You want to have a level of abstraction, right? So go ahead and create a variable and pass a variable there to that URL. I'm going to copy this. And posting books, you see here, it says base URL. Can you see the base URL? The base URL is a variable. So I'm just going to API, the collection, variables, and set the variable. Here is the variable. The URL, the posting of the books. Now that we set the URL, we need to post a book. That will be done on the body. And as Brian said, today we'll be working with JSON for posting data. So in the books, there is a title. Go ahead and give your title. Your author, go ahead and add your name. The genre of the book that you want to add any book you want, and the year published. So I'm going to add a book called Blossoms of the Savannah, because that's the book we did. Blossoms. Author, I'm just gonna leave my name. Jan writes educational book and year published is, I'm just gonna change it to 10. I'm going to click save and hit send. You will get a message response saying, okay. Now I'm going to go to books and check if it has been added. Awesome, it comes there, Blossoms of the Savannah, Job Mbugua. Customarily, it's not you set the ID because the backend will set the ID for you and they created that. So anybody who has been able to send the post request. T-shirts at stake.
Yeah. Come on, give it a try. Post, send a JSON data.
Brian, you can help.
Okay.
Doll's house. Who's added Doll's house? Titus. Titus. Nikatu Titus. Like nataka kuna maswali mingi nataka ni record. I can see as promised by Gen Zs. Who's added promised? Hannington, the last one.
There's a little confusion here. When you want to post data, what you do, you change the method to post, and then on the body you go back, you go to the body, and then raw, and then choose JSON. Bob, can you explain that?
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So posting data, I will repeat that. In fact, I'll create a new request for posting data. I'm going to add a request and so rename your request to adding a book. I'm gonna name my request adding a book. It's a post method and then a URL endpoint and the path. It's that. Awesome. So it's book or books. It's books. It's books. I'm going now. Once I've added the URL, I'm going to the body. Remember, data is passed, the payload is passed through the body. I'm gonna click the body, click on row, and there are different types you can pass with, but I'll choose JSON. So inside the body, remember the documentation, understand the documentation. In the documentation, let me just click documentation. Awesome. So view complete documentation. Posting a book. Can you see the documentation? I think I'll send also the link. The documentation, the different data that you can send. So for posting data, this is the payload. This is the data that will typically be
Change the
received by.
URL.
I'm going to copy this data.
Oh, equation.
And back at my API endpoint, let me just go back to my API endpoint. In the JSON, I'll post this. Okay. And I'll add a new book called I'll add a book called book. Lahiri. It's also an educational book, and year published. I'll just change it to 2020 and click on save and send. I'll get a response of 201 that is created, and the response data is message okay. Remember, it's not customary for you to send data or to expose your URL. You'd rather pass it as a variable. So you go ahead and set it as a variable. Remember, we already have the variable. This is a new variable, but you can name your variable as you want. You can name it as URL and give it the current value. Once you've set it, you can go back to your URL and change this to URL. And then you have the path of books. I'll change the book to Hunger Games. And it's a fictional book. And year of publish is 1990. I click on save and send. Message 201. Go back to the books and confirm if my book has been added. As you can see, my book has been added. I can see there is a third person who's chalk circle. That is Eric.
Yeah, we have also Isaac.
Isaac.
We have John Masibo. We have Jace Gatura. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to remove Eric because I can see there are others who had already added.
Yeah.
You still have a chance to redeem yourself. Once you've added your book, keep track of your ID. You've seen the ID in the response. You fetch the data. Go to the fetch data and fetch the data and copy your ID, that ID you have. The ID to your book you've added. The book you've added, copy that ID. We'll use it to the next request. We are going to use it in the next request. So as you can see, I'll be using Hunger Games. I'll copy my ID. Once I've copied my ID, next thing I want to do is get a specific book, and I want to fetch that book that I've added. Okay. In the body, not in the body, not the body, sorry. The params. Remember the root params, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to pass that ID that I've copied there in the root params. I'm going to click on save. Oh, so this is a new request, sorry. You're going to create a new request called getting a specific book. The path still remains the same, but for now we'll add a new endpoint, meaning we're passing a path param. And I'll pass an ID. So once I've passed the ID, I'll get that specific book. Okay. but it's usually not customary to pass data in the URL. So I'm going to create a variable and pass it to the URL. So I'm going to click and just add a variable called ID. You can name it as you want, ID, and click on the params. You'll see your key and the value. So the ID and the value is the ID that I copied. I'll click on save and send. Still get the same response. Okay. So not everybody has been able to fetch their book.
Was been able to fetch his or her book. Nice. You know,
Who has not
and
been able to fetch the book?
who? So, if creating a variable is if creating a variable is confusing to you, you can just input the whole URL into that field, and then you at the end you put the ID of your blog that you input.
It works. Or passing now the variable. Okay, let me, is my screen visible? Okay, I'll repeat the variable part. So, is my screen visible? Or so passing this way, it works. It works this way. So instead of now passing your ID at the URL, you want to pass it as a variable, and that variable you will give it you'll give it a value of your ID. So passing a variable, you just give a semicolon, so it will be books slash, give a colon, a full colon, and give the name you want for your variable. It might be my ID. Okay. Once you've done that, click on params. I think just under there, click params. You will see a path variable that has appeared called the name that you gave up there. You'll see a value. Then in that value, now you can paste your ID that you copied. Now you click send. It works.
So apart from the lagging issue, anyone still experiencing any other problem? So how many people have been able to access their logs apart from Titus and Jay? Yeah, we have Eric, we have Isaac. Yeah, that's good progress. Yeah.
Awesome. So once you've been able to get your book, we'll go on to the next challenge, patch. So we'll be using patch. You can still use post, but I'll be using patch because I want to just send one data to update one value. In the patch, remember my book ID. A new request. So patch is like updating data. Remember Brian talked about it. You can either use post or patch, but there is a difference between post and patch. I'll be using patch. The base URL, your ID, base URL is the URL, that is the host. The books is the path. The ID, keep in mind the ID you copied, okay? Okay, the ID you copied. I'll go ahead and copy my ID that I copied. This is the ID that I copied. I'll go to my books and just update it here. It's a value, so I'm passing a value in the URL. I'll click on save. Since you're patching data, I'll go to the body and I'll change the checkouts. Remember the books API. Once we've gotten the books, there is a value called checkout, right? By default, everybody's book was checkout was false, right? So I'm going to update my book, to patch my book or update, checkout to true. Again, click on the body, row, and it's JSON. And then update checkout to true. I'm going to click on save and send. I'm getting a message response of message, okay? I'm going to get my specific book. Remember, I've gotten a checkout of false, but if I send it again, I'll get it a checkout of true, right? So my second challenge is the first person to update their book to true, just raise your hand.
Nice, Eric. We have Eric today.
Eric.
Yeah, we have Eric. Anyone else?
Anyone else? Oh, use the patch method. Use the patch method. Sorry? Yes, of your specific book, the book that you added. You remember the URL for getting a specific book?
Oh, Polycarp, you've been able to patch. You've been able to patch. Oh, nice.
I can go ahead and check for people who've patched. Backend strategy is still false. Lead still false. So you've been able to, right?
Anyone still having a problem?
So if you are facing challenge, just lift your hand. For the people that were here, lift your hand and Omosh will come and help you if you're facing any challenge. Oh, you've updated. Awesome. Anyone facing challenge? So hopefully by now everyone has patched their book. And we'll move on to the delete book. So deleting a book, the same request we'll be using. And we'll be passing your ID, the book that you added. Remember, this endpoint is a public URL. Go ahead and delete the book that you added. Okay, so you will change the dot to delete. The base URL still remains, the book and the ID. Pass your ID at the root. Pass your ID at the URL, or you can pass it as a variable in the URL and click on send. Remember how to set the variable. It's params, your ID, and pass your ID, your value that you added. And I'm getting a status of 200. That is okay, that I've deleted my book. Okay. So Postman is quite simple and minimalistic to use. That was a simple way to do a CRUD operation on a public API. Remember, no, you need to secure, sometimes you need to secure your API, and in the authorization, you can go ahead and pass your authentication scheme that you'll be using. In this case, we have used no auth because our API endpoint was not secured. But remember, in the next series, that is API 102, we'll be doing more on authenticating and using secured APIs. Okay, awesome. So I think Brian now can take over for the next session, unless there are any questions.
Is there any question before we proceed? Yeah, so Bob, allow me to share my screen. Yeah, I hope the practical session has been enjoyable. So now, I think, we've done most part of the session. And I hope everyone has been able to interact with the postman very well and has been able to understand the different methods that are being displayed in postman. And I hope that as you continue building your own web applications, you get to use postman to increase efficiency and help you build good web applications. So to recap for what we've learned today, we've learned of the different type of addresses. We've learned on different methods. We've also learned on concerning the parameters, the body data, and the response codes that one would get on making requests. So just a simple advice. As you continue learning API as a Postman API fundamental student expert, we'll have a training session which will be created by the Postman lead. We also have you'll get to have a student expert badge which will showcase it to your future employers. You also get exclusive access to Postman meetups and events like the Postman Galaxy and the Postman User Conference. You will also get invitation to the online Postman Student Expert Program community. And also, you can have the option to become a student leader in your community. So before you continue, I'd advise you to, if you have a maybe mobile phone, you can scan that QR code. You can scan that QR code to register for the Postman Students Program, where you'll have a variety of certifications that will help you improve in learning Postman. And also, you will also get to be certified as a Postman expert. Let me send the link to the chat. But if you have a mobile phone, you can scan it. It will take you to the image share. Network. I think network is the problem. But nonetheless, I've sent the link to. I've sent the link to the chat. Could you please register and register for as a student for the student expert program, where you'll get to gain exclusive experience while using the Postman software. So yeah, there's as like I said earlier, there's an option where you'd be able to win amazing swags. So far, we have two amazing contestants. But as we proceed, there's also another catch for you to get these amazing swags. One of them being a T-shirt branded with Postman. It's a very nice T-shirt. So what you do, one, you'll share your learning with what you've learned with Postman, whether in LinkedIn or in X. Ensure you tag Postman students. Also, we have the blog writing competition, where option one, you get to write what you've learned during the session of your on your favorite platform, like Medium or Dev. And two, you will send it to us, and we'll send cool swags to the coolest blog, or to the coolest person who has been able to send one of the best blogs concerning Postman. And I will also copy this link and send it to you to the chat, where this is the part where you'll share your article, or you'll share the link to your blog post. And on sharing that link to your post or blog post, it will be reviewed, and then the best person will be emailed And yeah, from there on, you'll have to input your details so that the postman swag can be sent to your address. Also, we have some other resources like Learning Center. We have learning.postman.com. Also, we have explore.postman.com. This is for the API network. And we have a community forum, which is community.postman.com. I'll also share those links to you right away. Moment. If anyone has a question, I think now might be the time to ask. Yeah, those are the 3 links to get started with Postman. And yeah, does anyone have a question up to there? Yeah, yes, Eliud. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So let Bob explain that to you. Oh, you're on mute. You can repeat. You can just repeat.
So just a simple test case. As you can see, this is my test. Just testing if the response is 100. Go ahead and click on my test and just run my test. Just click on my test results and it's at 200. So that is the basic simple testing of an API. I'm just testing to see if it's 200, but you can have your test cases that are more complex. Like some test cases for this collection. You can go ahead and click on collection and click on run, and it will run the different test cases that I'd written before. I'm just going to click on run. Probably it will fail because I had I deleted the books. As you can see, two test cases ran first and 3 failed. That is how you test in Postman. I think that is on the next session, that is API 102. That is building workflows with API. We'll get to work with either M-Pesa or Spotify based on Brian. Awesome.
Yeah, I hope, Elliot, you've been answered well. So with that, we come to the end of our session for today. So before we complete our session, I have one request for you. Kindly, could you fill this form that I'm sending it to the chats. Just one moment. Or if you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code. You can submit your information on how the workshop went. Tell us how your experience was, and yeah, what you think could be improved maybe in the future coming sessions. Okay. Okay. Thank you for being with me from the start of this session till the end. I hope to see you soon. You can now leave the meeting for it to record itself. Yeah, kindly leave the meeting. We still have Daniel, Eric, Joyce, Titus, Eliud. Leave the meeting. Titus, yeah.